The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post, or excuse me, to Louie T Network presents my react to Summer Series episode 2 of season 2 with Craig Hoffman. It was a really fun episode to do, just like it was last year with Craig. And I want to give credit and just appreciate the support from you guys. A lot of great feedback from y'all as far as the episode was concerned. Really excited with the reception that it received. Craig was awesome, and it was a lot of fun to complete this episode, just like every episode of the summer series has been for me, seasons 1 and now 2. And so wanted to just say thank you to all of the support in the comment section. We're going to get to the comment section here and react to what a lot of you said about that particular episode. And we'll get into that here in a second. But before we do that, I would like to first talk about the Commanders organization once again knocking it out of the park, continuing to carry on tradition and uphold the standard that they've set by reaching back to the past and honoring a tradition that was once the best in the National Football League. They've done such a great job of marrying the past with the present. You know, so much has been made of the name and, you know, the jerseys and so forth and so forth. And, you know, there's certain things that you can't bring back. And so it's not going to happen. But, you know, there's a way to honor the past and what came before to be able to connect the two, right? And the Darryl Green retirement ceremony, which was long overdue, which was ridiculous. That should have happened eons ago. But doing things like that and, you know, continuing to honor those who paved the way for the guys that are there now. The success that they had is what we're chasing after. It no longer feels like a ghost, because with Snyder here, it felt like those 3 Super Bowl titles that Bobby Beathard helped construct in terms of putting that roster together. And although he was only here for 2 of them, the one in 82 and the one in 87, that 91 Super Bowl, he had his fingerprints all over it. They essentially won that Super Bowl with all of his guys. So I liken it to Jimmy Johnson. You know, the 3 Super Bowl titles the Cowboys had in the 90s. Johnson was the coach for 2 of them. And then Barry Switzer showed up and the thing was on autopilot and he won a Super Bowl that he had no business winning. That was Jimmy Johnson's Super Bowl too. That's how I feel about Bobby Beathard in the 91 team. Like, his fingerprints are all over that championship. And so, not to take anything away from Charlie Casserly, but Bobby Beathard was one of the best architects in NFL history, without question, the best general manager this organization's ever seen. And obviously you have a guy here in AP who's going to be trying to, I don't want to say emulate, because he wants to be his own general manager and create his own lane and his own legacy, but he is going to try to replicate the success of what Bobby Beathard was able to do yesteryear by helping construct a roster that was able to withstand, you know, a decade as the Commanders were one of the best teams of the 80s, because of the players that Beathard was able to bring in here. Much different time, a lot more players that were available via the draft because there were a lot more rounds and free agency didn't exist. So it was a lot easier to keep teams together. But they named the new draft room. Obviously, we watched the new draft war room that they had on display this past draft. It was so nice to see them in a state-of-the-art facility or room at least, and not looking like the bingo hall we used to call it. They finally upgraded and got with the times, looked like they were actually in this century. And then they christened it the Bobby Beathard Draft Room. I did not know that his son was on the staff in some capacity. I think he's some sort of scout or something like that, but which would make sense, right? If he is a scout. But I didn't know he was on the staff. And they posted a bunch of pictures of them. They have this big plaque there that I read, and it was a really good statement on the plaque. It's a nice gesture to continue to meld together the rich history that this organization has with the present that they're trying to get back up to speed on. And so this is just another example of an organization that can't miss right now. You know, they're swinging a hot bat. Everything that comes up to the plate looks like a beach ball, and they're not missing. And this is another example of that. So this was a great gesture by the organization, and they just continue to press all the right buttons. I can't think of one wrong button that they've pushed to this point. Love this, and I love it for his family, and I love it for his legacy. So the Bobby Beathard Draft Room now exists at Commanders Park. With that said, let's get into the react for episode 2 of season 2 of the summer series. Very successful episode. Thanks to you all out there. So once again, thank you guys for supporting, spearheading all of the support of this episode, and continuing to support all of the endeavors, whether it's this or Louie's lurking in the comments, the summer series itself, not just the react videos, etc., etc. You guys continue to support, and I really, truly do appreciate that. So with that said, let's dive into the comment section and kind of go through some of this. Most of the stuff I think is in here that I wanted to talk about. If there's something in here that's not, then I'll bring it up. But let's go through these real quick. Ty Stroman writes, I still remember Lou was telling us at least 3 times a day, we are not the Lions and we are not going to be the Texans. You can't skip steps. No hate. I didn't think so either, but it was just funny how much we all stressed it. No. I don't get to pass go. I don't get to collect $200. Ty, you are absolutely 110% spot on. I had to make sure that this one made it on the React show because I wanted to bring it up during the show when Craig brought it up. I didn't want to cut him off, though. He was talking. I wanted to cut him off so bad and say, oh, my God, last year in the offseason, I kept telling the fan base, the Texans had a head start, right? The Texans, we are not the Texans. They had their GM there for 2 years. It was already in place. You know, they just hit an inside straight with the quarterback and the coach, but we are not them, right? We turned this roster over, and you can't skip steps, and we're not the Lions. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, we blew past the Texans, right? Exceeded the Lions. The Lions never made it to, well, I'm telling a story. The Lions made it to the NFC Championship game last year, and or 2 years ago, excuse me, and lost to the 49ers, blew us 24-7 lead, and ended up falling short of getting to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. But it never in my wildest dreams did I expect us in year one to jump essentially straight to the front of the line. Like, you can't skip steps. We went from crawling to being the second or third fastest man in the world. Like, how is that possible? Like, we're sprinting. We're not running. We went from crawling, we skipped walking, we skipped running, and we went to full out sprint and one of the fastest in the world. It was amazing. And I didn't think it was going to happen. And I kept telling, and you're right, I've said this at least 100 times last offseason. We're not the Lions. We're not the Texans. You can't skip steps. You're absolutely spot on, Ty. And I got to take my medicine. I cannot skip out on that. You know, I always tell y'all, I'll be the first to admit when I'm wrong, because I'm definitely going to be the first to tell you when I'm right. So I was wrong on that one. And I was so happy to be wrong, by the way. I was so happy to be wrong. Jeep Commander, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Jaden Daniels' breakout was the Bengals game. Yes, it was. But when you look back with 2020 hindsight, you could say the throw against the Jets to Diami was the first glimpse at how special Jaden was going to be. I believe the rib injury, if it didn't happen, Jaden would have thrown for 4,000 yards, and he would have had over 1,000 yards rushing and should have been in the MVP voting. If you compare his statistics of 307 attempts or 307 completions over 457 attempts, 3,678 yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 821 rushing yards, and 5 TDs compared to the 331 completions, 480 attempts for Jaden, 3,568 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and 891 yards rushing and 6 TDs. When you look at these numbers, they are very comparable now. And I tell you that the first stat line is Lamar's 2023 MVP season, and the second stat line is Jaden Daniels' 2024 season. And if you really look at it, he didn't play in 1.5 games, and it hindered for several weeks with that rib injury. So if you tell me he isn't top 5 in the league, I'm going to tell you that you don't know ball. And also, that was a rookie putting up those numbers. Yes, a rookie, because JD5 is one of them ones. When he is on the field, you always have a chance because JD5 has that clutch gene, unlike guys like Dak, who has the choke gene. And yes, Dak caught a stray because he went from being the best quarterback in the division to maybe the worst at third best, LOL. Just wait for CD and Pickens to crash out on the sidelines with Dak. And everyone has to realize what AP has done with this team. They have great depth almost everywhere, not having a chip on both sides almost every play on and JD5 being able to sit back in the pocket like Hurts does. JD5 will pick apart defenses. O-line upgraded, wide receiver upgraded, running back upgraded, D-line upgraded, linebacker upgraded, cornerback way upgraded, and depth at all of those positions is amazing. O-line, you almost have 5 starters that might be our backups. There are so many D linemen that are trying to make the team starters are getting cut. I think you might be selling this just a bit much in terms of the depth. We don't have 5 more offensive linemen that can start. But I get what you're saying. The depth, it feels great. So does on the defensive line and the offensive line. I didn't say, I don't think starters are going to be cut. I said NFL players are going to be cut. There's a difference. We're gonna cut some guys that can be contributors elsewhere. But I think calling them starters is a bit much. Cornerback Lattimore, to me, will bounce back. Mikey in the slot and Trey Amos on the other side is such an upgrade over the BSJ, Forbes, and Michael Davis group we had last year, because even if they're just average this year, they are still an upgrade over what we had last year. True. And safety, Will Harris is the question mark. But at worst, I think he's a wash between Harris and Chin. And if the coaches don't see what they are looking for as of right now, a guy like Justice Simmons is still out there as a free agent. Maybe that is something AP will look to do if necessary. So that's a great comment there. As far as the Lamar Jackson comparison to his 2023 MVP season. So let's see. You also have to take into consideration what other guys did that year, right? That's the thing that you probably didn't take into consideration. Yes, on its face, on its head, face value, you look at the numbers, they're very comparable. Very comparable. What you probably didn't do was go back and look at Lamar's, he might have been in 3 or 4 blowouts that year where he didn't play the fourth quarter, right? Where he just turned around and handed the football off because they were up big. And I'm pretty sure they had some blowout wins in that season where you could argue that he might have had, 3 or 4 quarters where he didn't really play, right? But also the biggest thing is he put these numbers up and won MVP in a year where there may not have been other guys that played all that well, that killed it. I mean, this year, Lamar had the best season of his career. Josh Allen had the best season of his career. Joe Burrow had the best season of his career. Like, all of that happened this year. So even if Jaden would have stayed healthy, he would have been in the discussion. I still don't think he would have won MVP, but you throw for 4,000, you rush for 1,000, which Lamar did this year, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you are in the conversation, but Lamar would have probably finished with more passing yards. Lamar probably would have finished with more rush yards still. And I get it. He's doing this as a rookie. Lamar's in what year, 6 or 7. I understand that it's a lot different. And, when Lamar won this in 2023, Lamar was what? I think Lamar was in the 2018 draft. So Lamar was in the 18 draft. Mahomes was in the 17 draft. Lamar was in the 18 draft. So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, that was his 6th year. So last year was year 7 for Lamar. And Jaden was doing this in his rookie season. I get that as well, but I just like to look at it from this perspective. With everything that transpired last year, for him to put up the numbers that he did, you have to feel really good about what Jaden could potentially be moving forward. That was just the tip of the iceberg. We expect him to be that good moving forward. And that's a blessing for us as fans, the organization, the players around him. He's just getting started. There's an MVP or 2 in his future, Jaden Daniels, that is. And so you have to feel great about that if you're a fan, right? Jeep Commander, once again, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, player to watch, Bill, hopefully. Sound like Destiny's Child. Bills. And for a second, Jalen Lane. So this was in reference to me asking Craig towards the end of our episode, give me a name to watch at camp. And, he thought about it, and then he gave me Jordan McGee as his answer, which I think is a damn good answer. Because that's definitely a guy that I'll be watching without question. So Jeep Commander's response to that was a guy that he's going to want to watch is JCM or Bill. And again, why wouldn't you want to watch him? And Jalen Lane as a secondary option is another answer. So totally get that. Understand why that would be your choice, or those would be your choices. We're all excited to see how that goes. But I digress. Miss Perry. This one is funny. I had to add this one in. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Miss Perry writes, Lou will not let Carl Davis playing 65% of the snaps in the NFC Championship game go. I get it. No, I will not let that go. I don't even know why it still matters to me, because like we weren't supposed to be there in the first place. So I just got to be all right with the fact that he played 65% of the snaps. I'm just not all right with him playing 65% of the snaps. I'm pissed off because, Darian Mathis was never what we wanted him to be because he was never supposed to be a second-round pick. And because he was drafted so high, there was more expectation on him than it should have been. That said, you can't convince me that Fedarian Mathis wasn't better than Carl Davis. You're not going to be able to convince me of that. So to see Carl Davis out there doing absolutely nothing for 65% of the snaps really pissed me the hell off. Because, they kept talking about wanting to get him out there because he earned it, like he was actually putting in some sort of work on the field when it mattered. But we had what we had at the end of the day. We had what we had. Davis was a part of a group that didn't provide us with a ton of depth once we started to see injuries take effect. So it is what it is. But I can't let it go. I got to let it go. At some point, you just got to let it go, man. I haven't gotten there yet. You know what I'm saying? I haven't gotten there yet. The Benjamins writes, Louie ain't want none of the wood Craig was knocking on. You're funny, the Benjamins. You're funny. I hear your jokes. Okay, you got me. I hear your jokes. Anthony Wilson writes, I will take our current corners over last year's all day. At safety, Harris is a hitter with 4.41 speed out of college. That's in reference to Craig saying that he is very wary of our secondary, specifically the safeties. I think he feels like the corners aren't as bad, especially of Lattimore, which is the thing that I think he's a little bit apprehensive on, is what is Lattimore going to be? But if Lattimore is good, I think he's good with the corners. I think it's more so the safeties that he was like, the depth at safety is not great. Is not great. So speaking of which, here's another thing that kind of ties into that. Mr. DB, 2002 or 20,002 says, great listen, Lou. Appreciate it. Craig pointed out a concern of mine with the safety position. Not going to lie, I'm nervous as F. Chin's a huge loss. And there are a lot of people out there that feel that way. I'm not one of them. I told you guys when the season ended, Jeremy Chin was good. He wasn't great. And while I was very comfortable with him coming back, I wasn't hurt that he didn't come back. So you can do so much better than Jeremy Chin. I'm not telling you that Will Harris is an upgrade, but here's what we used to do as an organization. We used to keep guys here that weren't as talented because we were afraid of the unknown. So instead of looking to upgrade, creating competition, which is what they preach here, instead of creating an environment where you're creating competition or looking to upgrade a position that was okay a season ago, we used to just sit on our hands, do nothing, and just pray that that player gets better as time progresses. And sometimes players do get better, but when you don't have a great coaching staff that's going to enhance a player's ability to get better, you're really stuck in place. And that's what used to happen with Rivera and with Jay Gruden's staffs. They weren't any good. Guys didn't go from here and get jobs elsewhere. We had bad staffs. We didn't have good teachers. We didn't have great coaches. And guys didn't get better. Players didn't grow here. So if you don't love what you're getting out of a player, go find someone else and either give you the exact same amount of play or can give you better. And I'd rather strive for better. Even if it turns out to be worse, I'd rather strive for better. G-Man, right? So if you look back at some of your old clips, You see, I figured JD to be great. Now, I had no idea that it would be at that level so fast. You could easily see his college game had that persona. JD always looked calm, focused, and in control of the narrative. JD last year in college reminded me of MJ, Kobe, Magic, Larry Bird combined. JD looked like he had quite a bit of swag. So this is the thing I would say to you, G-Man. You might have predicted he was going to be good, great. So did other people. The key is you didn't predict that it was going to happen as fast as it did. And that's the key, right? Anybody could say, oh, man, I think Josh Allen's going to be great, but it's going to take some time. Okay. Josh Allen is now great. It took some time, but he got there. It's easy to make that statement and say, yeah, I thought JD was going to be great. But you didn't think it was going to happen, 3 games into his rookie season where you started like, oh, my God. You didn't think it was going to happen that fast. You didn't think he was going to do what he did in his rookie season. And that's the part that I'm like, you want credit for it, but you can't get full credit. You can have some. You can't have full credit because you didn't predict that he was going to be this good this fast. Tony D. Leo writes, if Snyder was still Washington's owner, he would have ruined Jaden. He would have gave up 3 first-rounders, 3 second-rounders, and 3 third-rounders to move up 1 spot to draft hometown hero Caleb Williams. That's a Snyder move. Shaking my head. You know what? You're not wrong. When I saw this, I bust out laughing. This is still a part of our PDSD, post Dan Snyder disorder, right? Shout out to the person that created that in the chat. But the PDSD is still real. And I brought this up in the video with Craig that if it felt like the Cincinnati Bengals and what they're currently doing and how they're conducting business would have been what we would have been had Snyder still owned the team and somehow we lucked into Jaden Daniels. And Tony's response to that is we would have never had Jaden Daniels because Dan Snyder would have given up. He would have given up the whole draft, New Orleans Saints style with us for Ricky Williams to get Caleb Williams, the hometown hero, sort of like he did with Dwayne Haskins. May God rest his soul. Billy D. Marcus. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, this year, JD is going to leave no doubt that there is no scheme that he doesn't have an answer to. His processor is elite, and I believe it is his best trait. Sophomore slump chatter drives me bananas because what we saw last year wasn't driven by sheer athletic dominance. It was his ability to see the game. It goes beyond his cumulative stats. Look at that performance with that supporting cast in those winning time moments. Special. I couldn't have said it any better myself. This is one of my favorite comments regarding Jaden Daniels and the year 2 sophomore slump that is supposed to be on the horizon. This is the perfect way to sum it up. It wasn't Jaden Daniels. Like Robert Griffin III's rookie season and his success was a lot of his athleticism and the way that Shanahan schemed up the offense to make them almost indefensible, right? It wasn't something that was easy to replicate, especially with his athleticism being gone the next year and his unwillingness to want to run. Jaden's ability is, at its best, probably from the neck up, despite having elite prowess everywhere else. Arm talent, legs, decision making, which is still neck up, but it's his ability to process. It's the ability to not put the ball in harm's way, quickly make a decision. These are the things that we think make him elite and put him towards the top of the crop right now. And I truly believe that it's all of those things that you mentioned, Billy D. Marcus, and then to your point, his ability to execute in those winning time moments. When you got to have it, Jaden Daniels has it. Did Gruntled Dan Snyder fan? the Bengals have to be the craziest NFL franchise. On one side of a seminal franchise with the no huddle and Boomer Esiason in the 80s and developing the West Coast offense with Bill Walsh in the 70s. On the other hand, a hilarious laughing stock that can't get out of its own way. Other than possibly the Chargers sending their 60s teams to desert steroid camps, the Bengals just take the cake for me. I don't know anything about the Chargers and their 1960s teams, but yeah, everything else checks out with the Bengals. It's just amazing how poorly run this franchise is. And it's the same people. I mean, obviously, some newer Browns have been entered into the equation, daughter, son, that sort of thing, keeping it in the family. But it is amazing how poorly run this franchise is, how cheap they are, how poorly run they are, how petty they are. It's just amazing. Yet you have Joe Burrow at quarterback, so he tends to make everything okay. Mike Hughes writes, I don't know why I get the feeling Jonathan Jones is going to be the third safety a lot more than what people realize. I don't know if that's something that they see him as, Mike. That was a part of his versatility when he was brought here, was that he could play both inside and outside corner, and he could also play a little bit of safety if need be. I don't know if that's how they view him. I think they strictly see him as a corner here, but you never know. You never know. With the way that this staff thinks and works and always seems to be prepared for the worst, I wouldn't be shocked if he's taking some snaps in camp already in the offseason at safety, and they're going to use him there a little bit just to make sure. Like, it's no different than, having Trent Scott take some snaps at center. Not saying that they've done that with him, but just to be prepared in the event, right? Nick Allegretti, just to be prepared in the event that he has to play center. We know he can play center. Let's have him take some center snaps, just so he's prepared in the event that he has to do that, right? I wouldn't be shocked if they've already done some of that with Jonathan Jones. I don't think that's the way they view him, though. Ethan Dykes, my God. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, the improvement in the depth of our offensive line has been crazy. Allegretti and Wiley are so solid. Being backups now is insane. And that was sort of what Jeep Commander was speaking to, that, a number of the guys that are going to be backups this year have been solid NFL starters. I don't want to, like, Nick Allegretti is a solid NFL starter to me. I think Craig Hoffman might have called him below average. I think he's average. Wiley has proven to be average throughout his career as a starter. And so you can get by with those two guys as starters. That's not ideal. But as backups, as depth, you love it. You love it. That's the kind of depth. That's winning depth right there on the offensive line. You can withstand an injury or two and still be able to feel comfortable running the stuff that you need to run. Like, there were times last year where, because of injuries, this offensive line wasn't capable of doing the things that I was watching the Carolina game earlier today. And the amount of holes they were opening up for Brian Robinson, keep in mind that was week 6. Or 7, week 7. The amount of holes, and Brian Robinson Jr. didn't play the week before, so he was a bit fresh. I don't want to say he was fresh because he was injured the week before and didn't play against Baltimore, but he was running well. They were getting 6, 7 a pop on the ground, and not that Carolina is a model, defense and one to be making examples out of, but hell, it didn't matter who we were playing down the stretch. We couldn't run the football till the Detroit game. So the offensive line was a much different unit early in the season, and a number of those guys were being sent to the bench, and that's a good thing for us. It just, like you said, it shows how much depth this team has now on the offensive line in particular. That two guys that started for you last year that were solid last year. It's not like these guys were awful. They were solid. But that's all they'll ever be as starters, is just solid. Now they're on the bench where they belong. And in these roles, they can star in these roles. So it's a beautiful thing to see the situation be where it is right now. So that was the last comment. So what I will say about this episode with Craig Hoffman is that it was a fun episode to be a part of. Craig is now, after being on for the second time in as many years, he's now a friend of the show. And I look forward to having him back. And he even said as much at the end that he was going to do it again next year. And hopefully next year we'll be talking about a Super Bowl, right? That will be great. But in looking back at the episode, there was a lot of dialogue, a lot of back and forth. There weren't too many things I necessarily disagreed with Craig on. I think, and I get it from a player perspective, you want the money. I think Craig feels like there's no way that Shamar Stewart would hold out this year and go back into the draft. And I do think it's very unlikely, but I do think that possibility exists. I don't think Craig really sees him turning down an opportunity to make NFL money, and that Shamar Stewart is going to be the one to blink in this game of, in this staring contest, essentially, in this game of chicken. He's going to be the first one to swerve. And I'm not too sure about that. Now, the Browns have been notorious for not giving an F. And so history says that the Browns definitely aren't going to flinch here. They don't give a shit. This feels a little bit different, but it's a lot of money to turn down. I'll admit. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not as concerned about the safety position as Craig is, but I get his concern. Like, he literally said, being out there during OTAs, and remember Quan Martin, still rehabbing from surgery, was not out there. And he said, real quick, you get into a situation where Percy Butler is out there and Jeremy Reeves, and none of us want to see that. As much as we love All-Pro Revo, we love him on special teams. We don't love Revo as a guy you have to put on the field in a defensive capacity, even though we've heard Joe Witt and company say they want to find a role for Revo on defense. Unless you got Revo down towards the line of scrimmage hitting somebody, I'm not the biggest fan of Revo back in coverage. So I get where he's coming from. I just don't think that last year Defoe was that big of a piece to this team's depth. Like, when he got in the game, he was ass. And they didn't even want to put him in the game last year. And when they did put him in, he wasn't very good. So despite having a guy that you knew had NFL experience that you could put in the game, it didn't benefit us any. I kind of think we're in the same spot we were last year defensively at safety. But, this time around, we don't have Jeremy Chin. We have Will Harris, and we'll see if that swap out ends up being beneficial for the Commanders or detrimental. But I'm not as worried about the secondary as he is. So it was a fun conversation. I agree with him on, Jordan and McGee being one to watch. I think another interesting conversation was Craig's definition of a successful season. He talked about getting back to the playoffs, and just seeing how it goes, right? He's like, you could win 14 games, but losing a wild card weekend, is that a successful season? I think most of us would say no. You win that many games, and who wants to be Minnesota? Or even worse, you get 14 wins in the number one seed and you end up being Detroit. Who wants to do that? So I think his thing was just get to the playoffs and then we'll see what it looks like then. So I'll tell you my thoughts on what a successful season constitutes down the road. You guys were excellent on that video. That's going to be a whole separate conversation down the road. But for now, we're going to leave that conversation where it is. And also, we're going to leave this episode where it is, as that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on this recap of Summer Series Season 2, Episode 2, featuring Craig Hoffman. We will do this again for the next episode of the Summer Series next week. But again, I will see you tonight for the Command Post, right around 9:30, 10 o'clock tonight, live, as we will have a number of topics to get to. And so hopefully I'll see you a little bit later on for the Command Post. Lots of content coming your way this week, and I'll inform you of that tonight. But hopefully I will see you then. And once again, I want to thank all of you for the support with the Summer Series. I can't begin to tell you how much it warms my heart that you guys appreciate the content and support the Summer Series. It's been a very large undertaking for me. It's me stepping out of my comfort zone, doing something different, and you guys have been nothing but supportive of it. So I really, truly do appreciate all of you. With that said, I'm going to glide to the side, allow you to enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully come back and interrupt it later on tonight for the Command Post Live. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care. Got a super chat. This is from Brandon Davis. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Brandon writes, did you see the John Keim podcast with Sam Fortier regarding the Commanders' luck factor? Your thoughts? I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that. I won't get into the specifics of it like Sam did, but I did see that episode, and I am going to talk about it tonight. And not specifics to what Sam said, but just in general, because I do think it's a very interesting conversation, one that we will have tonight, though. So yes, I did see it, and we are going to talk about it, not in the same context that Sam did, but it'll be very similar. The conversation kind of remains the same, right? To a much lesser degree, though. Sam was all over that thing. I loved it. It was a great conversation. Anyway, I digress. I'll see you guys later on this evening. Take care. Peace.